So we're on the grid here, and actually we're straight into the race. You can see that he's got a little bit of wheel spin. I think he qualified 5th here, looking to go up the inside of this driver. Now, actually, I'll just stop the footage here because a lot of this first lap, your confidence on the first lap, in the wet particularly, you can see it's wet in this footage, comes from your understanding from the green flag lap. So the lap where you go from the paddock, you go on the circuit, you do a complete lap, and then you stop on the grid before you start the race. During this time, if it's been a change of conditions and it hasn't been wet all weekend, you need to discover a lot about the circuit. And so during this time, you obviously can't go at full racing speed, but you can carry the kind of minimum corner speed that you would do through a fair few corners and try to understand how much grip the car's got. So what I like to do in a change of conditions like this is make sure there's no one behind me, get on the brakes pretty hard to see how much longitudinal grip there is, how much G-force I can pull on the brakes before the car locks up. Then I understand how hard I can brake going into the first corner. I can make the calculation somewhat. Then I like to find a long corner, get the car loaded up for quite a long time and really push the thing over the limit. You'll see F1 drivers do this quite a lot in the rain, where they kind of load the car up and then give it a load of steering angle, and they're just trying to force the car over the limit in quite a safe way, just to get a ballpark understanding about how much grip there is. And so hopefully, didn't see the green flag lap from my dad here, but hopefully that he's already done that and he has an understanding at least of a general idea about how much grip there is, and it can really pay dividends on the first lap, because if the other people haven't done that, you've got more information than they have and you'll be more confident to push the car up to the limit right away. So they've had to back out of this move on the yellow car up ahead. Now Croft is an interesting circuit, nice and quick, lots of fun. The curbs here are pretty old school in terms of that they're just painted with fairly normal paint. If you go to Silverstone or Brands Hatch, the grip of the curb is pretty much the same as the track itself, because they've been painted with specialist paints. At the more kind of old school circuits, you'll find that sometimes they're just painted with I don't know, a normal paint, and it's incredibly slippery. So I think we'll find here that we've got to keep the car off the curbs. What I'm looking for here, rather than just looking at where the circuit goes and looking at the view in front, I'm actually looking down here at the steering wheel. We need to understand how the car's moving, how it's moving around, and to understand the balance of the car. But he's doing all right. He's just settling into things, probably discovering a bit more about where the grip is. Now, I don't know the conditions exactly at Croft, and what I mean by that is during dry weather, the rubber from the cars builds up, as you probably know, on the same dry racing line. Now in the wet, that's incredibly slippery. However, sometimes the difference between off the rubber, the wet line, and on the rubber can be a few percent, or it can be lots. So, had a bit of a moment there. So what you have to try and understand is if that difference between the rubber and off the rubber is big enough to qualify you going around the outside of the rubber and restricting your line. So that's something that you should probably try to begin to understand, at least on the green flag lap. And it's something that you have to have a feel for. You need to kind of push the car over the limit on the rubber and then push the car over the limit off the rubber and see how significant the difference is. So the old man's settling into things now, just focusing on catching that yellow car up ahead, trying to keep it nice and tidy. My dad has a tendency sometimes to be a little bit leery, but he's keeping it nice and tidy. He's had a few moments as he's been going over the curb, but it's keeping it nice and tidy. So if you're watching the steering wheel now, you can see that he's just giving it barely, oh God, a load of understeer there. So just to go back a couple of seconds, if you're watching the steering wheel now, what we're looking for is how the car's reacting. So when it comes up to the top of the steering wheel, that means that it's getting a little bit of oversteer, a little bit of rotation, but now you can see he's added a load of steering angle in here once he's probably got on the accelerator and it's understeered and then is kind of caused it to oversteer, and it's a little bit messy. But I mean, in the wet it can be a little bit more like this because the grip's down and we're kind of manhandling the car a little bit more than we would do in the dry. The biggest things in the wet are that you understand where the grip is. If you understand that there's more grip off the rubber, it might have 10 or 20% more grip than it does on the rubber. And especially in the big braking zones, you can make so much time up in the big braking zones. So you see my dad's, well, he's on the rubber now, that guy's off the rubber, oh, he's gone off. There we go, one position. Should we have a look at what he did? So the yellow car ahead's gone in on a bit of a weird line, a bit tight, and I think he's starting to rotate. Because it's so wide here, he's still got a load of steering angle in on the way out of the corner. And then he drops a wheel on the curb that you can just see up ahead. Very slippery curve, he's got to drop 2 wheels on the curb, and that's the end of his run in 4th position. Okay, so let's carry on. You can see down in the bottom left, when the camera's working properly, that we've got no one behind us. Now in the wet, it's really important that you amass as much information as you possibly can. And to do this, the most efficient way is to use the delta timer. You should be looking at your delta quite a lot. I think this might be a safety car as you slow down. Yeah, okay, so the safety car's out, you can see it just up ahead here. Yeah, so going back to the delta while the safety car's out, because you need to amass the information as quickly as possible, you're kind of joining things together. So I might try one corner off the rubber, one corner on the rubber, and then kind of make a decision as to whether the rubber's worthwhile running on or not. And the delta can be used to actually confirm whether a line or a part of the track is quicker. So you'd look down at the delta, and for those of you who don't know, the delta timer shows you the difference between your best lap and your current lap, and it updates live every 1/10 of a second or half a second or so to say whether you're going faster than the previous lap or the best lap or slower. And companies such as Race Logic do this. It's a display that you can put on the steering wheel. Makes things very easy or easier when you're trying to find the time. So you'll be looking down at the delta before you go into the corner. Obviously you need to get your vision actually where it should be going through the corner, and then looking at the delta again as you come out, and you'll see it either, you know, which way it's going, whether you're gaining time or whether you're losing time. And that way you can begin to take information from different parts of the track and refine and refine and refine. It's not a black and white thing, especially in the wet. We're looking for little bits, we're trying little bits, we're exploring all the time, we're trying to understand how much G-force the car will take, if the G-force on a particular line around the outside off the rubber, for example, is slightly more than it is on the rubber. So that's what you're trying to do in the wet. It's just about exploring all the time. So I'm going to move this forwards a little bit. Kevin's trying to keep some temperature in those tyres. Not sure how successful that'll be. So in these moments, when you're behind the safety car, I would be exploring the track. Once you're past that vehicle on the right there, we should be exploring in the corners at least. So let's move in forwards. Here, I'd be forcing the car to understeer off the rubber, forcing it on the rubber, and seeing what the difference is. Unfortunately, my dad's not doing that. Maybe he's got enough information from the circuit already and he's understanding that. But every opportunity when you're here is a chance to learn. And you can see the guys in front aren't really doing that, so it could be an advantage. This is something that we saw Verstappen do in the 2018 Grand Prix. When they were behind the safety car, he was out there exploring all different bits of the track. I actually made a video on it. And nobody else was doing that. So he went into the restart having loads more information than anyone else, and predictably just drove around a lot of them. Now I know there are a few things in that situation with Verstappen where he did have, for part of the race, much better tyres than other people, but he was out there exploring. That's the point. We're trying to learn as much as we can. So I think the safety car is coming in. Yeah, the safety car's gone, lights are out. We're just trying to focus here, and unfortunately my dad's gone in a little bit too hot. All we're trying to do here is stay on the pack and go. So let's just have a look at his preparation for the restart, because we can see up ahead, it's difficult with this, this is a non-HD race logic system, so they do a high definition version now, but this is the older one. You can see actually up ahead the pace car, the lights have gone out, which means that the race is about to start. Now I would be right on the tail of that orange car up ahead, prepared for them to go, because the guy in the lead is going to drop back, let the safety car go, the pace car go, and then nail it. And my dad's actually already started off, you know, quite a long way back from the orange car. We need to be like almost alongside this guy. So we've given up a bit of space there, and actually when he gets on the throttle, because he's trying to make up for it, he does all right there. A little bit of oversteer there as he's gone in. It's cost him a little bit of time, but we've lost time there just purely because he wasn't on it and ready to go behind that orange car. So first lap after the safety car, looking pretty good. The car's pretty well balanced. If you watch the steering wheel, you can see him making some tiny adjustments. Decent exit coming out of turn 2. Whoa! And you can see there he's probably on the limit of being legal in terms of how much curb he's taking through the chicane. Let's just run through it again. So he's fine here. Look at that, it's perfect on the right hand side of the tyre. And then, I mean, so we're using a lot of curb there, and the reason is, I've spoken to him about this actually, is that the car, when you hit a curb with a lot of steering angle in it, especially in the wet, it jumps up and lands, and when you've got a lot of lateral load going through the car, it will want to slide. And you might have to back out of it, or you might even spin. So if you can straight line this section of the circuit, obviously you're going to carry a bit more speed through there. Now, as a racing driver, I am one for pushing the limits and seeing kind of what's acceptable. So I would be trying this too, until I got a warning. If they had a marshal there that was looking at this in particular, then you might get a warning. But just push that limit until you understand. Now, yeah, maybe I shouldn't be giving that advice on the YouTube channel, but as a racing driver, we're looking for every little thing that we can get. So it's important that we do try these things. And there's one thing I can say about my dad, is that he's very competitive and he will try these things, which is absolutely brilliant. So here we go again. So we're in 4th position at the moment. Tricky conditions. Just trying to keep everything as tidy as we can and continue that learning. Like, even it's only had 4 live laps. See there, mate? It's a little bit fighty with the steering input, so it got a little bit sharp with the steering input there, which will have caused the front to slide prematurely. Oh, Jesus! So let's watch that again. I think he turned into the first bit too early, and that then sent him wide. So just watch the steering wheel as he's going through the next couple of corners. He turns the car in too early, I think. Gets it all over the curb. Yeah, he's gone in too early there. And now he's got steering angle. Puts him wide here, all over that curb. Really, oh. And he was lucky to keep it off the curb on the exit there, because that was a heart-stopping moment. Did well to keep it together. Turned in a bit too early, and that could be coming from vision. Maybe he was distracted by something, but in these situations, you need to make sure that we're looking a long way ahead, as I've mentioned numerous times on this channel, scanning back. Now, if you look in the rearview mirror, you can see when it's working properly, there's a car behind us. Oh, he's run deep, little mistake there. So this was the guy who spammed before, right? But because of the safety car, he was able to probably not lose a position and get back on it. Good exit coming out of here. The guy's right on the limit with the curb ahead in terms of getting close to it. Dad's staying in his toe, which is great. He's good through this section. Bringing the car in, nice, keep it away from the curb. Really tricky through there. See, the car in front is on a slightly tighter line. Now, perhaps that line is a little bit inside the normal racing line, which means that it's inside the rubber that will have built up, and perhaps it's got more grip. I'm not exactly sure because I wasn't there, wasn't feeling it, but that could be why he's on the tighter line. Let's see what he does through here. And the balance of my dad's car looks pretty good. I'm watching the steering wheel all the time to try and understand the balance of the car, but it's looking pretty good. There he goes, a little bit more gentle through there. You can see that it's just tempting him to take the previous curb, but I think we need to stay off that. Oh, a little bit too much oversteer there. So he's struggling, my dad's struggling quite a lot on the entry to the corner. And so what he should be thinking is what's limiting him on the entry to the corner. Why is that happening? Well, it's happening because he's probably trailing the brakes in a little bit too much. So as we turn the car in, the balance is too much to the front of the car. The front's got too much grip. So if you think about the platform of the car, you know, this Formula 4 doesn't have any aero, obviously. So it's just a kind of mechanical car. So when we brake, we've got the weight all over the nose and the rear jacks up a little bit, the front dives. If we turn in with all this grip on the front, the rear is going to be limited. The rear is going to be light and step out on us. And that's what's happening when he turns the car into the corner. I can see him pausing on the wheel all the time. So what he should be trying to do here is to actually ease up out of the brake pedal a little bit earlier and to a softer pressure. We still want to trail brake into the corner, but with less pressure. And that will actually distribute the grip to the rear of the car a little bit more and transfer that balance to where we need it. So the guys up in front now are battling, which is fantastic news for my dad. We've got I think we're fifth now, are we? So this is second, third, fourth and fifth. Decent run. The camera's gone pretty blurred now. I think we must have got some fluid on it. So let's carry on with him for a little bit, see if it clears up. By the way, this is probably about as much as you can see through the visor anyway. So the guys in front, interestingly, are just keeping the car on the normal line. So I don't know if that is the quickest way around or not. I'll have to speak with my dad and see if he did explore off the rubber. But no one's, I mean, the car in front was trying it a little bit there, but not too much. Section of track's good fun. Dad's gone in a little bit too quick there, so it will compromise his exit. Really slow hairpin here onto the start-finish straight. That's why we make the apex so late there, so that we can get a good exit. Okay, so the camera's cleared up a little bit. We're on lap 8. We're about 3/4 of the way through the race now. Now, when you're in this position and things have settled down a little bit, all we're trying to do is just to hook up on every apex, not overdrive the car. It's really easy to do that in the wet. You know, making the car more ragged. As soon as you lose that grip in the wet, you used a lot of curve again then. As soon as you lose that grip in the wet, a lot of times it takes ages to bring it back under control. And then you can lose loads of time. So we're catching the car up in front now. Not a great overtaking opportunity here. There's not that much deceleration. And really there, he should have brought the car back onto the normal racing line. He restricted himself by coming up the inside, kind of position himself there where it was going to be very difficult to make a move and didn't make the move, and now we've lost some time. And in Formula 4 racing like this where it's very close, it's really important that we don't lose any time because we've got to go and catch that up. If we lose half a second through a kind of half-hearted overtaking manoeuvre, then it could take 5 laps to catch him back up again, which is really detrimental. So efficient overtaking is very important. And also not overdriving. I find that a lot of drivers will overdrive the car, get a little bit excited actually when they're in traffic, and then just sit at that pace. There's a huge benefit to being really efficient with your manoeuvres, and normally it's a case of being patient for a little bit, getting a good exit coming out of a corner, and doing most of the job of the overtake down the following straight. Now, Croft is a little bit difficult actually to overtake, but in most circumstances, wouldn't go into gear then. In most circumstances, we want to get most of the job done on the previous straight. Yeah, so looking at that, my dad was, just to go back, my dad was a little bit wider coming through turn 3 here than before, and it got some oversteer. I think it's actually a little bit slippier on the racing line here, so I would be exploring that. Now, we can see here that my dad is quick through that chicane. Because of his liberal, shall we say, line through the chicane, he's getting a fantastic run down here. So what all he needs to focus on is staying on this car's gearbox for the lap until he gets around to turn 4 and 5, I think it is. Staying on the gearbox through there, maybe leaving like a car's length so that he can get a great exit coming down that back straight and then get alongside him coming through the section. So it's a case of keeping everything as tidy through here as we possibly can. You can see the cars floating around. What amazing fun. Keeping it all tidy, just trying to edge up, but not making any moves here, not making any mistakes, minimizing those errors. Come on, Dad. So we need a great exit coming out of here. I would be trying actually to run a bit wider. Dad ran a bit wider then, so it's quite interesting. He's actually lost a bit of time. We need to see if we can catch up just a fraction coming through this first section. Yellow flags are out, unfortunately, so let's try and get our vision up the road, see where that issue is. Waved yellow on the left. Car's in the gravel, so we passed the car. We should pass the next marshal's post now, so we're free to overtake again. We're too far away at this point to consider a move, but we know that we're quick through there and we're going to be able to catch the car up in front, but we're not close enough. If we were within a car's length, we'd be on it, because with the toe, you can see the toe here, we really get catching him back up down this straight. Oh, car in front of the orange one's just made a mistake. That's got a nice tight line through there. It's in these situations where racing is very frustrating. I find when drivers come into racing and they're in it, they get on the pace first of all. I mean, that's the first step, and then they start to race like this. A lot of the times they can overdrive because they're just so impatient to overtake. And you can see from this that you can spend a whole race behind someone. I've spent whole races, 20 lap, 30 lap races behind someone, just waiting. You know, if they're a really good level and you're a good level, not making any mistakes, you're just battling all the time, and it's the person who makes the fewest mistakes. And my advice there is you've got to be patient when you're overtaking. Oh, I just got on the throttle too much there. Picked up a bit of wheel spin and got a bit of a bad exit there. So that hairpin's really important to my dad, because he needs to get out of there well to be on the gearbox of the car in front through this section, so that through the next chicane he can position himself to overtake. But unfortunately we're not close again. Going back, patience is the aim of the game, and consistency, minimizing those mistakes. It's not an all or nothing move when you're only halfway through the race. You've got to sit there, you've got to minimize the time that you lose. So as soon as you start trying to overtake and kind of stuffing it up the inside and costing yourself half a second, 7/10 of a second, then you'll just move backwards, and then you've got to move yourself forwards. The worst thing is that you start battling too much with the car in front, and then you move yourself back in the field and invite other people to join the fight. Really, you should be kind of getting through efficiently. If you feel like you're much quicker than the car in front and you can catch the guys in front, you want to get through it as efficiently as possible to try and catch the guys in front. But if it's a battle like this, we need to make sure that when we do go for that move, it's efficient and it's effective and we get it done. So Dad's in a bit of the middle road here, so he's kind of compromising himself. We're losing some time to the car in front now. Let's see if he gets a better exit coming out of the hairpin. The camera's a little bit dodgy again. Gone in a bit tight there. Now we're on the rubber. He hasn't got too much wheel spin, but he's struggling coming out of that hairpin. Now, if you look down in the bottom left-hand corner, we have got a car behind us, so he is defending, distracted by that car. He's just pulled out, he's going to the left of us. So we should be squeezing him back up to the outside of the circuit. But that was the last lap, and we went past the checkered flag there. So all of that defence, I take it back, Dad, all of that defence in the last part of the last lap there was beneficial because we didn't want to lose that position.